Welcome everyone. My name is Ron Payne. I am the president of the Otter Creek Aububon Society. I just want to talk to you about a couple events we got coming up in the next week or so. We've got the Great Bird Count, which starts tomorrow. It's an online citizen science project that's been running for many years now. You spend some time counting the birds in your backyard and you upload them on the website, and it's something that's happening all around the world. It gets a good, nice midwinter survey of what the birds are doing. So I hope you all participate in that. This Saturday we have our monthly wildlife walk at Otter Park in Middlebury. It's going to be cold, so yeah. Come at your own risk. Our speaker tonight is a longtime board member of the Otter Creek Aububon Society. He's our treasurer. He spends all year working so that he can go on a good birding trip every year, and the benefit of that is every couple of years we get a nice talk out of it from him. Without further ado, Gary Starr.
Great, thank you. Okay, Ron, the mic is working, or for you? The mic is working for you? Okay, great, good. What we're going to talk about tonight is Papua New Guinea and the birds of paradise. Kathy on the left here. Can you stand a second? Over here. She's that. This is my brother. And I'm on the right here. And this is the lesser bird of paradise, which we'll see more shots of later. But what this is really more of a travel log and pictures of the birds and some of the international birding that we're doing. We've got a lot of slides, and so we're going to go through reasonably quickly. We started off with my studio in Weybridge. It was a nice summer day, and we had a 40-hour trip going from Montreal to Los Angeles to Brisbane to Port Moresby. So we went from here to Los Angeles, down to Brisbane, and back up to New Guinea, the island of New Guinea here. And this map here is the back of the seat in front of you when you're flying. So, and here's our plan going into Port Moresby. And there's they've written New Guinea in their pidgin English. So if you sound this out, it is Air New Guinea. And this is the airport in Brisbane. And we did do a little bit of bird watching there, but there weren't too many birds around, but we're one of the few people going window to window with binoculars. So we flew into Port Moresby. The whole Papua New Guinea was part of Australia until after the Second World War. And Port Moresby was the objective for the Chinese from the Japanese when the Battle of the Coral Sea came. And they never completed their voyage to Port Moresby. The island of New Guinea is divided into two parts. Papua New Guinea on the West Papua on the west, which is part of Indonesia, and Papua New Guinea, which is a separate country, on the right. We are also going to go to New Britain, which is part of Papua New Guinea. This is it's called the Rainforest Lodge. This is where we stayed in Port Moresby. Port Moresby is when they're ranked cities in the world. I think it was ranked third from the bottom. So this looks all very nice and it was beautiful. But when we went to the front gate later to take a picture from the outside, they had to undo a couple of locks, and the guy escorted me out with a handgun so nothing would happen. Nothing probably would have happened, but he just wanted to be sure. So we stayed in some fairly nice accommodations, and the food was nice and the people were very nice there. The first afternoon we went to the Pacific Adventist University, and this is just an open campus. It's a very big campus, and we're able to pick up a bunch of the local birds. A lot of the birds that we'll have pictures of here were on these ponds. Pacific Baza is one of the one of the really nice birds here, black butcher bird. And you can see he's got that almost like a shrike, the same butcher bird, the same type of bill. And then one of the first things we saw was the fawn-breasted bowerbird's bower, which is right here. And this is a special to attract females. And they'll also, and I didn't notice this on this nest, but and they'll put them around here and they'll attract the females. They do not use saber. And this is the fawn-breasted bowerbird with a berry in his mouth. This is one of my favorite birds, the masked lapwing. Just such a strange-looking bird. You wonder who would ever design a bird like that. And look at the color of the legs. Who would come up with that? These are Pacific black ducks, a little bit different than ours. And this was on that pond that we were looking at earlier. Purple swamp hen. I like the way he blended in with some nice color combinations here. It made it a little bit nicer. The Nankeen night herons. This was the same camera done different lighting. This was taken about 2 hours apart, the two pictures. This one is asleep. You can see this is the end of his bill right here. So he's got his head right down into his breast, and he was up in the top of a tree with several of them. This is a cute little guy. He was probably maybe 10 inches long from the bill to the tail. Just a tiny little bird, little grebe. And the wandering whistling ducks are really pretty. As you can imagine, the people that know me, I really like the ducks. So, the intermediate egret. And this is our first kingfisher, the sacred kingfisher, which is a fairly typical bird. You'd find this in Indonesia, also in the Philippines, probably over to Borneo. This was our first really good dove, the orange-fronted fruit dove, and they were eating these berries down here. But here we just have just the dove and the our pigeon or rock dove, and when you get into some of these other places, their doves are just absolutely gorgeous, especially the fruit doves. This is one of the birds that I really want to see, and this is called a frogmouth. And you can. So, Jim Andrews, would you have gotten that? Do you think a frogmouth? Okay. Yeah. So we saw this one, and it was really interesting. He was up high in a tree, and people kept saying he's there, but he's like the patus, that he just sits very still and assumes that people can't see him. And then this is a young pair of them. I think they're a little immature, probably young ones. White-breasted wood swallows. Teresian imperial pigeon. This is just a very pretty pigeon here, the black and white, and you can see some of the different feather groupings here. And this is still on the Pacific Adventist campus, and this is still finishing the first afternoon. One thing about this campus is that they have very big fields out here where they're growing different things and testing them, working on different irrigation systems. And this was just a father and his daughter just checking us out. Every time we show up with a group of people with binoculars, people tend to look back at you fairly. Then the next day, we went to Varirata National Park, and this is where we saw the paradise display area. And this is the bird we saw, the Rajiana bird of paradise. When they talk about bird of paradise there, they always call them bops for bird of paradise. So it took me a little while to figure out what they were talking about. Then, bops, okay. And this is, we almost missed this. We were there for about a half an hour, didn't see anything. We heard some in the distance. We started wandering off, and the next thing you know, they came back right to the display area that they usually are.
Why are they there? Do they feed them?
No, they don't feed them. No, that's just their natural choice. Okay. This is amateur photography here. And is there a volume here? As you can see, it's very windy, very cloudy, moist. And here's some other shots that I took at that same location.
So, Gary, they're displaying there.
What?
There were females flying around, and this male was trying to attract them.
Okay, yep. So these are two males here, and what Kathy was talking about is and I didn't get it in any of the pictures, but there was a female, one or two females coming and checking them out and seeing what display they were doing. When the females would come in, guys would go into the whole routine. This is also the national bird of Papua New Guinea. They're pretty outrageous, a lot of the birds of paradise, and one of the theories is why they have such great feathers and have all these intricate mating dances is that there isn't a problem with food there. There are plenty of fruiting trees, so there's no competition for food among the different birds. So they can spend, rather than spending spending energy foraging, they can actually spend it doing on feather developing and, This is our first parrot, the red-cheeked parrot in the upper left. And then this guy was absolutely gorgeous. He was probably a tiny little kingfisher, paradise kingfisher, about this big. And we could just barely see them. He was about 30 feet away through about 3 bushes. And he just sort of hung in there. And this is our first kookaburra. The rufous-bellied, appropriately named. I don't think they sing particularly, as they can make a lot of noise. There was another one that we heard later that was making. This guy was quiet the whole time. We saw him fly in, and he sat on this branch for probably 4 or 5 minutes.
The function of the large bill.
Probably what he hunts. He's probably hunting lizards or snakes or. A Teresian crow, a bird with beautiful blue eye. And this is some of our groups, and we were walking around in this park, and it's a lot of up and down. Some of the repair work isn't so great here. If you look under the feet, it's like almost like a hopscotch board. With a couple.
One of those action stories.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
have
yeah,
the
yeah. And this is where we're going down over a river and back up again here. But this shows you the type of terrain that we're looking at here. And even though this is a national park, there are people that come up and hunt in it.
It is the only national park in the entire country.
Yep. And it was set up what, maybe 20 years ago or something. Okay, a couple of butterflies. White-throated honeyeater. Honeyeater is another family of birds that they have here. It's a yellow-bellied flycatcher. And the park is probably 25 miles outside of Port Moresby, and it's quite high. It's probably about 6,000 feet. So it's a little bit different than the Port Moresby or the coastal terrain. And a lot of it probably has been logged over. This is a pair of coconut lorikeets. And lorikeets, parakeets, parrots, they're all there. Another kingfisher here. This is the blue-winged kookaburra, and this is the guy that was making a lot of noise. So we're able to find him from the sound he was making. Again, notice the big bill. This is the barred cuckoo shrikes. On the cuckoo shrikes, they almost always have these stripes under the tails, and they're almost always a lot more colorful than this. This is fairly dull for a cuckoo shrike. This is another example of what we were walking through at the time. This is one of their pedestrian bridges here. And in this, the camera angle is not exaggerating the steepness of this. And we were up and down these hills quite a bit. So this is one of my favorite birds, the yellow-billed kingfisher. And our guides were so good about calling this guy in. We could hear him in the distance for probably, a half an hour, Kathy? Was it?
A long time for him to show up.
Yeah, and he finally, we were almost ready to give up, and he came and landed almost above us. So one of the epiphytes that we ran into a lot there. And this is the terrain, probably volcanic here. And this was the bus we were on, and you'll see pictures as we go through. They're buses with, like camo, with plants and things, and you'll see later they also like to decorate themselves with plants, so it's really pretty nice. And this is our main guide, Glenn Valentine, and his parents, Susan and Colin. This family is good friends of ours. We've been on trips with their brothers, and we've been with the Valentines another couple of times. They live in South Africa. And this is the view from that roadway looking out into the valley towards Port Moresby. From Port Moresby, we're going to fly up into the mountains, up into here, and it's going to be 6,900 feet at Ambura Lodge. This is the home of the Huli tribe and the Huli Wigman culture. They said that this whole valley, this whole area here, was pretty well populated with the locals, with the tribes, and it wasn't discovered until the 1930s by different people looking for different mining operations. Yeah. So we're going to fly up there, and this is the entry gate reception area for the airport. And then we had most of our food at the lodge, but we would stop and get a few other supplies. And this was the local grocery store here. And here's the lodge we stood at, which was absolutely gorgeous. Our hut was probably this little one in the back row back here. And this is Kathy again. So, And up to our left is where the main lodge is. And this is part of our group. And this is our cabin here, and we did a lot of birding right on the site of the lodge. They had quite a few acres, and it was one of the first really big birding lodges ever developed in Papua New Guinea. And it's lucky they did it and were able to preserve a whole lot of land because it's being pretty well harvested around that plot of land, and they're finding that they're losing some of the bird species because of it. This is just looking up from inside our cabin, lying on my bed. And I just thought it was looked neat architecturally. So these are the real things as far as the roofs. This is the common smoky honeyeater, which ended up being a fairly constant companion to us when we were in the highlands. These aren't great pictures, but this is the Princess Stephanie's Astropia. Yeah, and yeah, it's easy for you to say. You know. That's birds of paradise. You know, all the birds of paradise aren't called birds of paradise. And this is the yellow-browed Melodectes. There's a little faint yellow brow right in here that identifies it. And then we went out the next morning onto the Tari Highlands, walking on a roadway, but we also went off in the lodge area here and did a little bit of a hike. This is a young boy that followed us around and was very attentive, and hopefully he'll become one of the guides in the future because he's showed a lot of interest. And this wearing the sort of headpiece here was, not a lot of people did it, but it was not unusual to see it. They like to have different things on their head. No, this is a very rough, hard gravel road. And this woman and like this boy here, they don't wear shoes. You know, their feet are just so used to traveling on these areas. And this is Ambura Lodge. This is our entrance here. This is coming back from a bird trip. This wasn't how we were greeted. And this is the guardhouse. And they sit in here, and you can see the smoke just pouring out from the guardhouse. And they would sit in here, and I can't imagine that they don't have lung problems all the time. And then this is a fairly typical sign here. Chewing a betel nut and spitting in and around the lodge is strictly forbidden. It is an unhealthy practice and an eyesore. So. And these are just some quiet moments we have. This is our friend Glenn Valentine. But we're up overlooking the Tari Valley, which was just really gorgeous. As we're going to dinner, it was starting to get a little bit dark, and they had a bamboo wall, and I looked over, and there were all sorts of different interesting creatures on it. Here, there are 2 bugs in this one. Here. This is the King of Saxony bird of paradise with these long, long feathers, alternating black, white. And this was probably, 200 yards away, Kathy?
No, there was a whole valley between where we were and where he was.
Yeah. Yep. So this is the best I could get out of with the camera I had. And then this is again in that upper part of the valley, looking down. Beautiful sunset here. This is our other guide, Adam. The Papuan grassbird. And grassbirds tend to have very long, scraggly tails. And then this one, if you look closely, is the plum-faced lorikeet. This is the top of his head, right where that red is. And this, if it had been a really good shot, would have been all sort of a dark purple here, a plum color. The black Satella is one of the smallest birds we saw, probably less than, maybe 3 inches. And it was great celebration because our guide, Adam, I think there were 6 different birds he was looking for that he hadn't seen in Papua New Guinea and New Britain, and that was one of them. So he was very excited about that. This is a orchid that's just on the side of the road. And this is a short-tailed paradigula. Then we had a little bit of an incident here where we were birding, looking at the slaty or the blue-gray robin, and this guy hops out of a truck. Kathy looks up and says, "That guy's carrying a gun." And he came down towards us and shot once, said he wanted a death, and then he got tackled. And so it was a little bit scary.
Who tackled him?
I wonder.
I'll confess, I tackled him, and Adam was right on my back, so that the two of us tackled him. Yeah, he was coming down the path saying, "I want a death," and saw him reloading his shell. He actually dry fired at us a couple of times too, so it was pretty scary. Then we're back on the road. Enough of the scary stuff. So, and this is actually, there are some trees, but this is getting high enough where it's just sort of more naturally a little bit more open grassland. And it's fun because you run into the local people, and they're all quite interested in us and really looking and seeing things. This is an example of one of their huts, and like in a lot of places, there are no chimneys. So you see the smoke going up through the roofs. Yeah, isn't this one gorgeous? I just thought yeah. The one down here was probably 4 inches across down here, and these two were smaller. And this was just in our, right outside our room in our lodge. That was just right in the garden. It probably took me 5 minutes to get these shots. Then we did another hike around Umbura Lodge. And this is the road that we went back and forth on for 2 or 3 days. And what you do when you're birding, especially international birding, is you go and you get to see what you can, and then you go back again to see what you missed. You know, and you keep doing that, and at the end of the day, you miss some. So, but it's how it goes. And this was our local guide. He was one of our local guides. He was quite good. And here's Adam, who is going to come up and spend some time with us this spring, and I'm going to hopefully get him to do a bird walk with us. He's originally from Canada, and he really knows our birds also, so it should be fun. And then we went to the Huli Wigman. These wigs that they have on here are actually their original hair that they grew when they were youngsters. They actually went to a special place, ate special things, did special routines, and then when they got to a certain age, it was all shaved off and made into this wig. This is a cassowary tail up here, and this this is one of the hats you'll see them wearing here. But if you look here, that's the King of Saxony bird of paradise.
Wow.
Yeah, feathers here, and that's probably the princess one here. So part of the deal was that we could go and watch them while they were getting ready. And somebody asked me about the yellow, and I'm not sure what the pigment is, but it's got to be more traditional. And these are sort of the local wise men, the people that help settle disputes. So, not like Disneyland, their whole routine isn't choreographed tremendously, but. So here's one working on some nose things. Yes, yep.
They have holes in their septums, put bones into the
Yeah,
It's the yellow.
Decoration.
yeah. Yeah, but they obviously spent a lot of time getting ready for this and getting dressed up and getting the right garb. There's another one with the same septum thing. And here's that King of Saxony feathers again here.
Yeah.
And I forget what bird these feathers, these wings were of. So then we went out and sat down. You can tell in a minute that it's not the Russian ballet here. They sort of get a little out of coordination here. Think about it a little bit here. Yeah, and then get going again.
Carrie, did they do that for you guys because you were tourists, or did they?
It was because we were tourists. It's because Rock Jumper, the crew we went for, paid them to do it. It's basically what it is. And the other thing is these are dolls they have for sale, bags, but it's a very low key. It's not, they might get 6 groups a year that come. It's not a real super organized thing.
Does the different headdress denote rank?
I have no idea. I would imagine that this guy is the main guy. He's got the most feathers. And the other thing is, over the years, there have been different groups that have worked with these people on how to preserve the feathers. So they, rather than use them for 5 or 6 months and go out and kill another bird, they have ways of preserving them now. So that's something they've worked with, and it's been very well received. This is Kathy and I with our friend here. And this necklace here is on the table over there. But these guys were great. They were really fun, and they enjoyed being with us as much as we enjoyed being with them. And there's the whole crew together.
What was the temperature up there, the weather up there?
The temperature actually was pretty cold in the morning. I would say it was maybe 45 to 50 in the morning, warming up to maybe 75. Yeah, and this is a little bit lower in the valley, so it was, probably at this point it might have been, 70, 75 here where we were. And then this is the next morning we went up on the same road again, but you can see that we're in the clouds. And you can see that nobody's too eager or expecting to see a bird at this point. And on a long bird trip, you have a lot of moments like this. Then we started our trip over to the next location. We came in with these birds. This is a large tree mouse here. This is his tail coming down here. Fantail cuckoo and a brown sicklebill. Okay, so now we're at Tari, and this is where we take was it a 7 or 8 hour bus trip?
An armed guard.
With an armed guard, yeah, especially after our gun incident. We had it over to Mount Hagen, which is a much higher location. And there were several spots when we get to Mount Hagen. We're going to be at the Kumo Lodge, and we're going to be with the feeders and trails there, the Lye River Valley, Wilson's Village. That isn't the name of the village, but it's Wilson's Village, and he was our local guide. Max's Orchard Gardens, Pickety's Trail, and Mount Hagen Golf Course. I put that in especially for George Ramsayer, who's in the audience. Okay. So this is our starting the drive going down into one of the valleys from Tari. We're going down here. This is our van driver, and again he has the vegetation on his head, on his hat. And this was I believe it was a Saturday, so it was a very big crowded local market day, and there was also a soccer game going on that we went by. We got stopped twice by impromptu local road blocks that will not sort of hold you up, but they'll be looking for money. But then our police van behind us would show up and they would disappear. And then we're at the Kumu Lodge, and this vegetation here, this is their feeding platform, which you'll see pictures of. There's this beautiful tiger parrot that was in and out during the 2 or 3 days we were there. This is ribbon-tailed astrapia, and this is another bird of paradise. And this, is his head, which is almost a turquoise, and this is his long tail. It's very much like a Dr. Seuss type bird. I don't think there's anything else like it anywhere that I've seen with this. And it's such a flexible tail too. You can see it's sort of draping over some twigs here, and you just wonder how they don't lose them.
And only the male has that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this is the female here. You can see this, or an immature cat. Yeah. Yeah. Again, where this is probably two different, this tail looks a lot longer than this tail here, so it's two different birds. Again, on that same feeder. And these are two brown sicklebills, and if you can see this one, he has a yellow gape in his mouth, and this one is flipping like a breadcrumb up to him and feeding him. So they were flipping it to him. So this one was always doing the feeding to this one. And you can see how decurved their bills are, which are really pretty neat. Then went up to Wilson's Village. These are a bunch of little boys that followed us for a while. And what we're looking for is the blue bird of paradise. And I cheated, but I tried to be honest about it. I said picture from the internet. And that, believe it or not, is what this bird looks like. So, and that again was a sort of a long distance shot, but in this area with that elevation and at that latitude, it was quite moist in this area. And then we saw the superb bird of paradise.
Oh boy.
Yeah. In all, there were, in our bird list for birds that we could see, there were 22 listed. We ended up seeing 20 of them and hearing the other 2. None. And everybody does their checklist differently. We check herd, so we felt pretty good about it, but would have liked to seen the other 2, but we didn't. And then this is one of the local snacks. We saw them selling them on the side of the road, but they just take peanuts and the stems and just wrap them up and go. And this is just the discarded husks left over. This is in Kumu Lodge. This is our room was here, and there was a whole series of walkways to get to it. But it was actually quite spacious and quite nice. Except for the water, I think it got what?
Cold and rainy up there, and not much hot water.
Yeah. And then this is the feeding area that we're talking about. And this is where, this is actually this rail right here. So you're just looking right down onto this feeding area.
So is that just stone with vegetation growing on it, or is that
Excuse me?
the feeding area? Is it a stone wall with vegetation?
No, it's actually like a a pier with columns here, and they've been feeding here for about 30 years. And so they take all the vegetable scraps and also other fruit and that's gone by, and they put it out daily here, and the birds just come. And they've been doing it for long enough that they have a good population that's done it. Other lodges have tried to duplicate it, and they get very little for the first 5 or 6 years. It's not until this is and this is the inside of our lodge, which was really fun, just nice, different type of construction. This is our, the owner of the lodge.
I don't think so.
No.
He was a helper man.
Oh, no, he was the manager anyways. And he was starting the fire for us. And all the locals, all the people that worked there would be huddled around this fire during the day. Not during the day, but during the evening. Then back onto the feeding station, there's the island thrush, which it's nice going to a place and seeing something that they call a thrush that actually looks like our birds. This is the Belford's Maledictes. And the other one had a yellow eyebrow. And this has white on the eyebrow here. That's one of the differences. This is one of the cutest little birds, the white-winged robin. Another yellow-browed. And this was a large black-tailed giant rat. And this is probably nose to the end of the tail extended was probably about this big, stood about this high. But it was actually quite cute. And you know how after you've come back from a trip, you looking at some of the pictures and you don't know what they were? That's what this is. We have looked at, with that bill configuration, it looks like one of the little robins, but I don't think it is. Yeah, this is a beautiful flower, and there were 2 or 3 different birds actually came to this flower. And we saw the common smoky honeyeater before, but this is it with the yellow skin, and then it flushes red. So this could be the same bird. It's
What causes it to flush red?
Embarrassment, I think. I'm not sure. High blood pressure. Yeah, alcohol. Yeah, drugs. I don't know. And then we went down to Max's orchid garden, which was probably about a mile and a half hike. And this is just some of the typical moss on the side of the tree with the epiphytes sort of, and or the other things just growing out of it. This was a very pretty lorikeet, which we didn't get a great view of, but has this beautiful long yellow tail. And if you notice the sign here, "Welcome to Paradise, Untrapped Tourism." Yeah. And as you can see, it was pretty wet up there.
Did it like rain every day and then stop? Did it like rain a little bit? Stop?
No, it's not like the Caribbean where the rain sort of comes and goes. It was sort of, we had rainy days and not rainy days. So the bronze ground dove was actually a pretty special dove. It's quite rare, and we're lucky enough to have it come to the feeder, Regent Whistler. And then we went up to see the lesser birds of paradise at their Lackina display area. And quite often in foreign countries, they'll have, well, we have it in the United States too, but there'll be somebody that will have a special bird, or, if you can imagine having a special sparrow at your place, and then, and then coming, and then people come to it, and these people weren't charging. We did buy some bags and things from them, but as we were going up to look to the lesser birds of paradise, everybody wanted to be part of it, and they just had a very nice home, beautiful gardens. And this is a coffee roaster that they had here. Yeah, and that's the lesser bird of paradise. And I liked it so much, I took another shot. And this is the female coming and checking them out and saying, well, that's pretty good. And there were maybe 4 or 5 of them there putting on different displays.
4 or 5 males.
Yes, yeah.
Did you pick one? Are they singing or?
Yeah, they make a lot of noise.
They make a lot of noise. I wouldn't necessarily call it singing. Yeah.
They don't have to sing.
No. Yeah, Jeremiah would look good in something like that, wouldn't he? And I like the shot with the female sort of checking him out there. There are 2 of them going at it. Okay. Their shrikes actually look like our shrikes, the long-tailed shrike, and brown falcon, which is more of an Australian bird than a Papua New Guinea bird, but we did find them. This woman was out taking her goat for a walk. This is one of my favorite little birds, the torrent fly robin. And torrent birds are birds that like to make their living along or in very roiling, rough waterfalls or very heavy water. In South America, there's the torrent duck that you see, and it looks like Niagara Falls going by him, and he's just calmly sitting there on a rock and just completely happy. And then this is the entrance to the lodge. Right in these stones, with these little guys here.
Looks like skinks.
What?
Skinks.
Yep. Back up on that porch. This is our van for going around there. And then this is our last morning at the Kuma Lodge. And again, this is no exaggeration on how steep it was. And we went up there, and I think we saw 1 bird. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you see one new bird?
One new bird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not many other birds.
It wasn't our best day. George, wake up.
George, yeah. And then, actually, this Mount Hagen golf course, they use for a big sort of Asian or South Pacific golf tour event.
But there was a special bird there.
Yeah, there's a special bird there. And they had a few warning signs.
Do they have their own airport?
No, it wasn't their airport. It was the whole region's airport. Mount Hagen Airport. And this is the bird we were looking for, the black-headed whistler.
Why do they have the sign about forbidding chewing beetle nuts?
Oh, because people spit on the ground.
They spit all over the place.
Yeah, and it's pretty nasty stuff. Then next from Mount Hagen, we flew over to Bubul. Here, the arrow shows us going to Kiunga, but we actually they don't guarantee that you're going to be able to fly into Bubul, just because the airport quite often is fogged in. So a lot of times they have to go down to Kiunga, and you take a 4-hour bus trip up the mining road to get up there. When we're in Mount Hagen, there was a funeral with all the weeping and crying and people showing pictures of them, and it was interesting. This is the Bubul Airport. Don't you find these airport pictures fascinating? And this is the Hotel Cloudlands.
It's the only hotel in the entire town.
Yeah, and it's owned by the mining company. And the mining company has They only just had a very small part of their mine open because of the price of world price of copper was down. It wasn't economical.
What do they charge for a hotel room?
I don't know. It's all inclusive with our tour. If the tour is any indication, it was quite a bit. And this is my normal birding attire. This is Kathy in the room, obviously. And then this butterfly was probably 4 or 5 inches long, or big. It was a big one. And this one looked completely dull when it was flying until it put its wings up and you saw this beautiful blue. There were cane frogs on the location, which are considered to be a pest. And then this is our bus here, and again they've got all the paraphernalia on it. They've got some nice backrests here, and they actually had a kingbird of paradise hanging from the mirror for good luck. Here. We did see the kingbird of paradise a couple of times, but it was very high. It was raining and didn't get any good pictures of it. So again, I copied from the internet. So the difference between a bad-looking kingbird, a kingbird of paradise, and a good one is right there. And this is a tunnel they built to go to a hydroelectric plant, and they have English and they have this pidgin English. So if you put them on, headlight belong to you. It's turn on your headlights. But if you sat and looked at it, you could figure it out. Yeah, so it was, and this was one of our guides, and he was quite good. He was very good. This is Salvador's teal, which was one of our targets for this area, and we were lucky to see it the first day. This was part of maybe 20 different of these orchids, just right on the side of the road. And this was quite rainy, as you can see the water on the lens here, and the birds are quite far away, so there are very few bird pictures from this area. So this would be a good time to get refreshments. One of the things we did was we walked up this pipeline here. The pipe goes from where that tunnel was, and we're on the other side of the mountain here. And this was treacherous. This was about a 45-degree angle, and the grading was just slippery. It was, luckily nobody got hurt. And here I'm teaching them a finger trick. So some of you have seen it before, but and you can see how wet it is. And we've just slogged down to see, do you remember the name of it? What?
Torrent lark,
Yeah, torrent lark.
which flew by so fast there was no chance of a photograph.
Then walking around in town, Barbara here was a school teacher. She was a headmistress for a 1,300 person girls' school in England, and so she saw these kids and had a great time with them. Stout-billed cuckoo shrike and the common cicada bird. And this is just another shot from up near the water pipeline. But it was just gorgeous things to see. Then from we went down to the Kayunga here, and this was a 4-hour drive from Dabubal, and there wasn't really too much to see on the way. But we went quite a bit downhill. Kayunga is the port city for the mine, and you wonder what's a port city doing in the middle, but this whole river system here, it was quite dry when we were there, but normally bigger ore ships can travel that area. the Kiunga Guest House. This was right above a sort of a little shopping mall. This was the entrance to our room here, and this was the other side. And then we went to kilometer 17 and saw the greater bird of paradise, and this was my best shot right up here. And then again from the internet. And then we're on Boys Town Road, which there was a nice little bluff, but we'd be up there and there were a lot of birds flying around, flying over us, and there were at least a couple of group of hunters. These guys had slingshots here, and these guys were hunting like a wild boar with chase dogs. And this is our friend Adam again. It's not a. This is a beautiful bird, the pink-spotted fruit dove. Again, that whole fruit dove family that just looks so great. Then we went to the Kiunga airport. It was security was tight. We could only get to the end of the runway. And what we were looking for is the Australian pratincoal. Pratincoal. And you saw another bird that I didn't see there, Kathy. It was kestrel. And then we went on a boat trip on 3 different rivers. So we started out very early in the morning, and I think it was maybe a 6 or 7 hour boat trip. It was pretty much, most of the long morning right into the early days. So we're in 2 different boats. And there was all this small boat traffic. This is more of like a commuter boat here, where there were maybe 10 people in that boat. There's a man fishing here, a couple of young kids just out playing around. And we stopped on this sandbar here to see the 12-wired bird of paradise. The bird of paradise, I think, was in this tree over here. That one right here, right on the horizon. So that was the best shot we could get of that. And then this is some of the dwellings along the river. And it's pretty dry, so it's there's a long way down to where the boats are at this point. I think this is the only crocodile we saw. The palm cockatoo is probably, it was huge. It seemed about 2 feet long. Very big bird. Channel-billed cuckoo. Again with the cuckoo, the stripes on the tail. And then this bird here is the southern crowned pigeon. And it looks like it's all just fuzzy here, but it's feathers here in the crown with a maroon chest. And we saw 4 or 5 of these. Not every group sees them when they go in. And this is our lodge. This is where we stayed, the Kwatu Lodge. And this is where 12 of us slept. This is our bedroom here. This is our bedroom right here. So this is looking out, looking down, looking up. It was sort of wide open. And then at the far end was the dining hall here. And that was right over the dining tables. This was a stick bug that I found. And this is another bower from the flame bower bird. And the previous trip, they'd had the flame bower bird come into here. So I spent quite a bit of time by myself just staking this out. They had a nice hide for it, and he never came. But we did see him at Boys Town Road, but just a quick flyby. And this is our the cooking, the kitchen, basically the work shed. And this is going out into some of the hikes around the property. purple-mantled imperial pigeon. And this, and this was found. We were looking at a cassowary. No, it was a brush turkey nest, and our guide happened to put his hand on the tree. I said, "Whoa!" But this, you would. What do you think, Jim?
Oh, it's a cool kind of tree frog of some sort, isn't it?
Yeah. And it was probably about 4 inches long.
Big.
Yeah.
Boy, it's a beauty.
Yeah. And here's our whole group again. The Papuan hawk owl is a very hard bird to get, and we were luckily got that during one of our night hikes. And the Bly's hornbill. This is the only hornbill that we saw in Papua New Guinea, whereas if you're in other places in the Philippines or Indonesia or Borneo, you tend to see more of the hornbills. And then this is sort of to show you what's involved with getting back down into our boats. So it might have been a little steep, but it was muddy. So. And this is our southern cassowary. And this is, we never saw it. Kathy almost saw it. She was the third one in line, and our guide said, "I think there's a cassowary coming." She turns around and said, "Cassowary coming." At that motion, the cassowary ran by, and the one woman who wasn't quite a birder was the only person that saw it along with the guide. Very frustrating. And this is the cassowary tail again from the Wigman. And this is their footprint here, which seems, it's much fatter, but seems about the size of a great blue heron footprint. And then we had the black-billed brush turkey nest, which is right here. And this is another one that we saw. This is the brush turkey from the internet. We heard them, we never saw them. What they do is they lay their eggs, and then they come back and check on them to make sure that they're the right temperature. And if they're getting a little bit cold, they put more stuff on. If they're getting too hot, they take things off.
It's all composting.
Yeah. And this is where we spent most of the morning looking for the New Guinea flightless rail, which we never saw. And this area here is where they take the sago palms and pound them with these tools. And they make sort of a local carbohydrate staple that they have. And we tasted it, and it tasted like shredded wheat, like the old biscuits, but a little bit tougher. More halfway between shredded wheat and a scouring brush. And just some of our local people. This woman here grew up in Waltham, Lois. And now we're heading back down the river here. You can't see it very well, but this pack this woman is carrying here, that is the toe of her baby. She's carrying a little kid here, but what that does is it leaves both hands open for her, and she can get along well. And this is where we let them off. This is the relatives come out. She had come up to cook the food at the lodge, because the lodge is probably only occupied for 8 weeks a year at the most. This is a local fisherman that we saw. Fig parrot, the white-bellied sea eagle, which is, you find quite a bit in that part of the world, but it's still a beautiful eagle. The white-faced heron was an unusual find. This is the only bird that was a write-in on our trip. A write-in meaning that it wasn't on the original trip list, and this is a bird typically found in Australia. And this is our landing area. And then we're back on Boys Town Road here. This was actually, it's not a great picture, but the ornate fruit dove was extremely beautiful. Okay, from Kayunga we went back to Port Moresby, back here, and we went back to Pacific Adventist University campus, and then we went to Browns River, which is sort of this little inlet right up here. And then that was the end of our trip, and then we flew over to New Britain for the second part of our trip. So this is the Kayunga Airport accommodations. This is the welcome area right here. This is customs inspection right here. And I think it also serves as the baggage area. When we got off the plane in Port Moresby, Lois saw this woman with his pocketbook, and she said, "Wow, that's incredible." And she said, "Yeah, they gave it to me as a wedding party gift." And she said, "I don't want the thing. Do you want it?" And so gave it to Lois. I don't know whether she got it back to Springfield, Massachusetts or not. But they're doing the full inspection here. Okay, then we're back in Port Moresby. These are the pied herons. And this would be intermediate egret here. Comb-crested jacana, swamp hen. Willie wagtail, if you travel in that part of the world, they're sort of ubiquitous. They're, I've seen them make nests on like telephone wires, out in the middle, so nothing will get them. But they bob this tail and they move around. They're just a delightful little birds. We saw them most every day. Intermediate egret. Little black cormorant. These are both wandering whistling ducks. And another little grebe. This is a firebird. Has a very funny head shape, but it looks like he has the cloak and the hood. And that's why they're named firebirds. This is a Australian white ibis and the peaceful dove. Again, the blackback butcherbird. And then this was the gardens and the outlands for the Pacific Adventist University.
What are growing there, Dan?
Oh, Kathy and I,
Papaya?
yeah.
Some kind of fruit.
The Eclectus parrot here. All the back sunbirds. Sunbirds are in that anywhere but South America, South and North America. The equivalent is of the hummingbird is the sunbird. They quite often serve the same functions. They're just a completely different type of birds. There are no hummingbirds outside of North and South America. There's a couple more of the bazas. Little bronze cuckoo. And this is a really cute little bird that I really like. Yellow-headed cisticula, sorry. Yes. And usually these are, they fly around. They're seed eaters, and you find them in the high grass. And usually people point them out and go on to the next thing, but this guy was pretty cute. Okay, so that's the end of our Papua New Guinea part, and now we're going to quickly go over to New Britain Island. Papua New Guinea was part of the Australian shelf. So from here, this is all very low swamp area. This area here goes over, Australia's probably maybe 200 miles this direction, and this area is only like 200 meters deep, and it was all connected at one point. So a lot of the New Guinea birds are connected with the Australian birds. Now, Here, going to New Britain, there's a trench that goes up here that's 6,000 feet deep. Yeah, so anything that's not a water bird isn't likely to make it over to here. You know, there is some crossover, but nowhere near as much. So this is a real different area. So this is we flew into Haskins Airport. These were some starter chickens here. And this woman was great. She had all the modern things, and her face was covered with tribal tattoos and stuff. She's, you know, somebody that's had probably a very long, very interesting life. And this is in Walindi Resort and Dive Center. Its primary guests are probably scuba divers and snorkelers. They've got a bunch of beautiful places to eat. The food was wonderful here. This is our morning group. And this is taken from our boat dock, looking back onto the main building. The first night we're there, and one of the target birds is a Melanesian megapode, and it's a scrub fowl. And we're there having dinner, and this bird flies right into the dining room. And our guide Adam runs over, picks it up, and brought it over and showed it to everybody. And it just was an adorable little bird here. This is an adult picture I took here. You can see the huge feet. Yeah. And this is their nest right here. What they do is with those big feet, they dig a deep hole into the side of a volcano. Doesn't have to be an active volcano. And they bury their eggs and leave, and that's the end of it. And when the babies are born, they come out and they're independent. What happens is that being the side of a volcano, it has that extra warmth underground, and so they don't need to incubate it. And places where we've seen these types of birds, there's always a stream going through, and it's always extremely hot, the stream is. These little emerald doves were all over in the oil palm plantations. This is a nice black bittern that posed for us there. This is red-knobbed imperial pigeon. You can see this little red knob right on the end of on top of his bill. And this is a greater flying fox, which is a big bat. Probably when it's hanging might be about this big. And depending on where you are, people either avoid them or they love to eat them. You know, metallic starlings with bright red eyes, beautiful, very triller. And we'll see several pictures of walking up and down this road looking for things in the trees. We got off the road a little bit and picked up some travelers.
Are they seeds or bugs?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
And this is the Bismarck crow, which I think is great, because look at the bill on that thing, the beak. The New Britain kingfisher, we're very lucky to see that. And this is our accommodations here. These were gorgeous. So this is our cabin, Kathy in the front. This is our interior space. This is one of the flowers out front, and this was, if we walked to the end of the grass in front of our place, this is what we looked out on here. And these are volcanic, and you can see the still volcanic activity up here. This is a local hut. We went to this yard because there was the special New Britain hawk owl high up in a tree, which we were able to see at this place. Yeah, that description is sort of like telling you which branch the bird was sitting on, but you know, that's sort of what it is here. Oil palm plantations. This went on for miles. We probably drove 8-10 miles in through this palm plantation to get to where that road was that we showed you, going up into the hills. And these are the palms, and they process them for oil. So when you buy palm oil, It's this monoculture that is going on. This is a blue-eyed cockatoo. And this is quite a big bird. This is, I'd say, 30 inches. Yeah. And this was a guy that was sort of fishing illegally over here, but, yeah. And then Tambu, Noken Workum Garden along here. Another views from the lodge. And then we went out on a day trip out into Kimby Bay, and we went on 2 boats. These are the 2 boats. And what we were doing was we went to 3 different islands, but this island here, we were looking, we saw the Brahmani kite, which is, yeah, it sort of reminds us of our bald eagle, smaller, but that happened to be on the island. But what we were really looking for was the mangrove golden whistler here and the Bismarck's imperial pigeon. And these 2 birds, what they do is they go to the mainland to feed, but they cannot compete with the other birds on the mainland. They have trouble competing, so they found this niche of going and being island dwellers and nesters and mainland feeders. You know, so.
What was their problem on the mainland?
I'm not sure. I think they're just not very aggressive. I think they. And this is our group on the island here. Kathy and Sue liked our driver for some reason. Greater crested terns. This was on an island with probably 100 of them on the island. Pacific reef heron. And this was our 2 boats here. This is the big dive boat they use when they have a big group of scuba divers. Then we're back up onto our roadway. This is probably 20 years ago volcano where things are starting to grow back now, but you can still see a lot of the dead trees. And this was from the view from the top of the hill here. And this is another red-knobbed imperial pigeon. And then the Eclectus parrot. And this is the male here. And this is obviously their nest. And somebody said this looked like a Christmas tree. You know, this is a bee eater, which we don't have any in this country, but they have them in most other parts of the world, more in the more temperate climates. Bly's hornbill again. This is a red knob-billed fruit dove, which is a little bit different. It's got a great orange spot in its belly. And this is a little bit better view of the metallic starling with the red eye. A couple of local plants. This is a plant that was right beside the road, so you can see how much dirt and dust there is being kicked up. And this is the transportation. One of these trucks would come by about every half an hour with taking people to and from. There were some villages up further in the mountain. Local bug. This is one of our participants who had a little back problem. This is a stop. This is a snack break here. And this is the second vehicle we had that day, and that broke, and we were pushing it up a hill to push it down. Sorry, to push it down to get it to jump start it, and we were lucky enough to get it done the first time. The black honey buzzard, which doesn't, looks pretty good just sitting on the branch here, but when it flew, it was quite nice. This is one of my favorite birds of all time, the mustached tree swift. We've seen it in 3 different locations. We've seen it in Borneo, the Philippines, actually 4, Indonesia, and here. And it's just a great bird. And then we're back at the airport and flying. This is New Britain, one of the volcanoes here. This is the center of Papua New Guinea. You can see how high it is. These are actually clouds here, how high it is. And Most of this just hasn't been explored or hasn't been seen by people who would do mapping. And then we spent a day sort of just taking it easy at the Rainforest Lodge. This is the picture that I took out front where the guy had to escort me to take the picture. And then this is Brisbane, Australia.
Oh, dear.
Great. Thank you. So anybody have any questions? Or
Where to next?
going to leave in 2.5 weeks to Cuba, and then we're going to go over to the Yucatan Peninsula. After this trip, we were thinking about signing up for another trip, and we said we want something a little bit easier. And so that's what this was. It's not the most grueling trip we've had on, but it was it was a good slog. Kathy, what's your description of a birding trip?
Forget.
Oh, okay.
This one?
A grueling experience with fond memories. So, but the group we went with, Rock Jumpers always seems to do a good job for us, and that's one of those things that as soon as you find a company you like, you might as well just stick with it. I know it's getting late, and I'm sorry I went over the time limit a little bit, but I'll be around if anybody else has any more questions.
Wonderful pictures, Gary.
Oh.
What was the food, Gary, that you...
The food was actually quite good. We were warned that it wasn't going to be good, and it was a lot of squash, tilapia. Yeah, tilapia. Just sort of, it was good, solid food. It wasn't fancy food, but
Lots of local vegetables, and we had the same vegetables.
it's run very poorly. There's a lot of different